Hey everybody, welcome back to Dorm Squad Sports, college sports podcast focused on Alabama athletics. I'm Dakota here with Brian and Oakley, and we got a great episode for y'all this week. Of course, the A-Day is coming up tomorrow. You're listening to this on Friday, and we're going to give you pretty much the best breakdown we can about what we're looking for, what to expect, and just any advice that you have or that we have to give to y'all about the game and like what to expect. So before we get into all that, I just want to just remind everyone. So we're on Spotify. I think this is like one of our third or fourth episode since we've gotten on Spotify. So if y'all prefer to listen to Spotify, if you're on Apple Podcasts, obviously you can listen there. Subscribe wherever you're listening. But let's go ahead and get into this. So what we did was we picked a player from every class for who we want to watch in this game. So let's just all go through our freshmen. If Oakley, you want to start?
All right, yeah. Freshman I picked was John Mechie. He's an early enrollee. He's a wide receiver from actually Canada. And I didn't know what to expect a whole lot from him because he wasn't that highly recruited. He's a 4-star. So, I mean, he's pretty good. But the rumor around spring practice, he's really been showing off really well. So I'm really excited to see what this guy can do in a big environment, like big game environment.
Yeah, obviously, like the receivers are pretty much settled. You got Judy, Ruggs, Smith, and Waddle as your top four. But there's been some talk that Mechie may push for that 5 spot. You know, if somebody were to go down, he's really showed out. Some other guys in the mix there would be like Slade Bolden, Tyrell Shavers. But the word is Mechie's really impressed. He's even played with the one some. So yeah, he's also a really exciting guy to see. My guy was DJ Dell. If you've been reading about spring practice a little bit, you'll know he's been going with the ones a good bit, splitting time with Fedarian Mathis there. I've heard a lot of comparisons to Deron Payne. He wears number 94 like Deron Payne. He's really like thick for a freshman too. You know, he's not one of those guys that needs to come in and put on weight.
Hey roommate, we're not going to delete this from the podcast. All right, just keep going.
Yeah, he's like not one of those guys that needs to come in and put on a lot of weight. He's ready to play. It seems like so. I think he's going to play early and often this fall.
Yeah, it's honestly, is it really unprecedented to have a freshman D lineman get time with the ones this early? I mean, can you think of another time where that's happened recently?
Probably the last time it happened was probably Deron Payne.
Dang.
And
I remember, I think Raekwon Davis said that he talked to to some media group, and he was saying that he keeps telling DJ Dale he's going to be Deron Payne, and he just laughs off and says, "Nah, I'm going to be better," which, you know, that's probably the attitude you want to have as a freshman when you're playing so well.
So something else, I don't know if you remember. I think it was maybe Jonathan Allen before he left. They asked him about the upcoming defensive line group, and he said, watch out for Quinnen Williams. That was his take. And on Quinnen's way out, they asked him who to watch out for, and he said, watch out for DJ Dell. So maybe we should start listening to what these guys are saying.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not just a bunch of coach talk when coaches go up to the podium. These guys are probably being more realistic about who they actually see is performing well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when they're in the room, they keep up with everyone just like we do. So if anyone knows, it's going to be their teammates. So the freshman I picked, and he's probably the best known freshman out of the class, is obviously Taulia Tagovailoa to his brother. And I wouldn't really put a freshman quarterback on here except for the fact that a lot has been talked about Mac Jones struggling this spring. And Taulia has an honest chance to work into that number 2 spot at quarterback even by the time fall camp starts around. So it'll be a really big spring game for him. Obviously, it's the first time we'll get to see him. And if y'all remember what Tua did in his spring game, that was when Jalen was, for sure the starter, Jalen's sophomore year in college. And Tua just balled out that game. And people didn't really know who Tua was at the time. And it kind of raised everyone's eyebrows as to who our backup is. And now that we know who Taulia is going in, it'll just be interesting to see if he can live up to the hype that his brother set before him.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch Taulia play. Like you said, he's probably the most known freshman coming in just because of his brother, and he's got a lot of hype around him. I hope that he doesn't try to, live up to, he's going to have really high expectations. I hope he doesn't really let that weigh him down too much. I hope he just, I hope he's himself, and, because I've seen him play live before. He's he's really good. I don't want to compare him to his brother at all because his brother is fantastic. But I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be one of the really good quarterbacks of college football.
All right, Oakley, who's your sophomore?
All right, my sophomore is Josh Jobe. We saw him in limited minutes last year, and especially the championship game whenever Savion Smith went out. And in my opinion, I thought he played at least just as well as Savion did in that game, which is really uplifting considering such a young guy, sophomore. And I think he's going to be, if he can have a good fall, like that's gonna be huge for us, secondary wise, because we have actually a pretty good amount of experience. Trayvon Diggs, Shy Carter, Xavier McKinney, and then Pat Surtain, and then probably Josh Jobe. So we have a chance to have a really good secondary.
Yeah, my sophomore was Yabi Anoma. There's been a lot of, or if you actually remember, in the offseason, Anoma entered his name to transfer portal, and about 5 minutes later, he withdrew it after Saban talked him into coming back. I think he's going to have a chance to, play, make an impact this year. But we are loaded at outside linebacker. But we do have some injury-prone guys there. Terrell Lewis is obviously the guy that I'm talking about there. Anthony Jennings is coming back. But, after that, I feel like, that third spot's kind of up for grab. Chris Allen's also there, and I've heard he's been doing well. But I think Anoma was one of the highest-rated recruits we've ever had, which that obviously means nothing. But a lot of guys obviously saw a lot of potential in him, and I think he has a chance to play a lot this fall.
Yeah, I know. Out of all of us, I think Brian's the most who takes literally nothing into recruiting rankings because it's obviously it's all about who you play, but that's something you're really adamant for. But that being said, he is the 4th highest recruit coming out of high school in Alabama football history, and he is the highest defensive recruit out of Alabama football history. So I mean, if that's gonna mean anything, then it's gonna mean something there. So yeah, and I put in Ali Cahoe. And the reason I put him in, of course, when he came and transferred here, there was a lot of questions as to what role would he play and how long it would take. And, of course, he missed some practices over the spring. But he's been working with, did you say the threes? Yeah, so he's been working with the threes, which is not really what a lot of people were expecting. So it'll be interesting to see if he can, have a standout game to say, hey, I can turn this around. By the time we get into the fall, I'm going to be ready to get in the ones or twos. But if he's working in the threes now, he has a lot of ground to cover, and I think he can make it up. But it'll be interesting to see if this is a chance for him to do that.
Outside of Moses, I really think KO probably may have the most potential out of all the linebackers, which that's just potential. I really think he probably just, looking, he really needs to bulk up a little bit. He's a little small. That's just my opinion, though.
All right, what's your junior?
My junior is LeBron Ray. So LeBron Ray's going to have to take the spot of Isaiah Buggs this fall, opposite Raekwon Davis. Raekwon coming back really helped us. And if you watched last year, LeBron Ray had some really good plays, and he showed some major potential. And so I think he's got a chance to have a really breakout year and show everybody what he's got.
Yeah, LeBron Ray really showed a lot of flash last year. I think at times, he didn't play as much as Buggs and Davis, but I thought he was just as productive as those two guys. He needed to bulk up a little bit, though, and he did do that this offseason. My junior is Brian Robinson. Everybody's talking about Najee Harris, and rightfully so. I do think he's the best running back on the team, but I do think Brian Robinson is going to open some eyes this fall. I think we're going to run the ball more this fall than we did last year. I think we're not necessarily because we don't trust Tua as much. I think our offensive line, especially in the run game, is going to be a little bit better this season. And Robinson, he will complement Najee Harris's game really good. And I don't think it's just going to be the Najee Harris show. I think Brian Robinson's really going to get a lot of carries this season.
Yeah, and speaking of him, my junior was Najee Harris. So, we're coming off the Josh Jacobs year. And I think Josh Jacobs is probably the most underrated running back in the Saban era when you go into a season in terms of what he did, because everyone's like, oh, this is going to be Mark Ingram's year, this is going to be Derrick Henry's year, whatever. But no one really thought it was going to be Josh Jacobs' year. And even though this is Najee Harris's year, I still think he has a chance to surprise people because he's been working behind so many stars. But the fact that not only did he stick with it, but every time we put him in, he makes a highlight play. It reminds me of Tua's freshman year when we put him in garbage minutes against Vanderbilt and teams like that. And every time he was in there, he was on SportsCenter for something he did. Najee's making jukes, doing hurdles. Watching film of it, he just has one of the smoothest, the most smooth footwork that you can see. So I really expect him to have a good year, and hopefully he'll have a good spring game.
Going into last season, I said I thought Najee Harris was the best running back on the team. Josh Jacobs probably proved me wrong, but I stand Najee Harris all year last season. I thought he should have gotten the ball a lot more than what he did. Just what he did in the Georgia game this first year, and he had a good championship game when he touched the ball, which I don't know if he had a whole lot of carries, but he showed up in some really big games, especially like the LSU game. And I'm excited to see what he can do now that he's probably going to be the starter.
Yeah, so going into the seniors, my senior was Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon was having a really good year last year until he broke his foot in the Arkansas game. And he almost went ahead and declared for the draft anyway because that's how good he was performing. So it's huge for us because we got him back for his senior season. Could definitely, if he has a year like he was having last year, could probably go first round. And I think that's also important to have a senior leader along with Shy Carter in that secondary because a lot of them are young. Xavier McKinney will be a junior, and then Job and Sertan will both be sophomores, assuming that they start in the secondary. So I think Trayvon Diggs will be huge on and off the field for us.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with Diggs because I don't know if it's going to be kind of like offensive line. It seems like they kind of disregard the center guard tackle thing, and they're like, all right, let's get the 5 best offensive linemen. Or I don't know if they're going to try to just get the 5 best defensive backs out there because that might push Job onto the field. But if not, Diggs is starting somewhere for sure. But I think it'll probably end up being corner, but we'll just have to see. My senior is Raekwon Davis. The season Quinnen had last year was a season we was expecting from Raekwon Davis. Raekwon didn't have a bad year last year, but he didn't really build off the year he had the year before that. And I think it's not even it is critical performance wise, but I'd like to see him really step up and be one of the leaders on the defense because there's not really an alpha dog on the defense right now, and somebody really needs to step up, be a leader, and have a good season.
Yeah, and then my senior was Shy Carter because coming in as a senior, I think he had a really good junior year in general, but especially late, he seemed to really come on. And like you said, we're going to need some leaders and we're going to need some dogs. And I think Shy Carter has a really good chance to be one of those. He might not be the most vocal person in the locker room. He might not be the one to take the center of attention or make the best play. But he's a guy that if you put him on the field, that you trust that he knows what he's going to do and he's going to make the right play. And I think that he'll be able to do that a lot. And, usually when you get to seniors, it's either someone, like when we're talking about people to watch, it's either someone who was buried on the depth chart that we're finally getting to see, or it's someone that you know what you're expecting. You just want to take that next step as a leader. And I really think Shy Carter has a great chance to do that. Okay, so what's the biggest roster battles that y'all think we need to watch for? I put some on the docket, but anything y'all want to talk about here?
I think the obvious biggest one is probably the who's going to line up beside Dylan Moses because, linebacker was a weak spot on the team compared to what had been in past years. And I think it's really important that we find – that's what I'm going to be watching for Saturday is, who's the second guy next to Dylan Moses. Not necessarily who's starting by him, but who's playing the best out there at linebacker other than Dylan Moses. That's what I'm excited and going to be watching for.
Yeah, because you got a lot of guys that are in contention for that spot. Josh McMillan, I think he's a fifth-year senior. Markel Benton, who's a junior alongside Dylan. Then you got Jalen Moody, Ale Cahill, like you said earlier, and maybe even freshman Shane Lee, who looks like an NFL linebacker already. Big dude. So, like Bryant said, it's going to be interesting to see who plays the best in tandem with Dylan Moses.
Obviously, we don't really know, but let's guess. Who do you think or who you think the starting linebacker is going to be beside Dylan Moses?
Yeah.
If I was guessing, like knowing Saban, I would guess Josh McMillan. Game 1. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, as we progress, he may gain more confidence in one of these younger guys that can have a little bit more speed, more agility than Josh McMillan. Like, he's a reliable for the most part, but the potential-wise, I feel like Moody, Cahoe, Shane Lee, those guys have a higher ceiling than Josh McMillan, and Saban may see that as the season progresses.
Yeah, usually just, when it's still a battle, rule of thumb, unless someone just proves to you that they deserve it, he's just going to give it to the oldest, most experienced player. And even though you might not finish the game, like just getting that start means something completely different. So, obviously, especially in the first few games before we get in SEC play, we're going to be seeing who, plays well. So we're going to be running a lot of people. But just starter, I would just pick, the oldest person on the team who's in contention for it.
As far as who, I'm not sure who's going to start week 1, but I would not be shocked at all if by week 2 or 3 Shane Lee was the guy that's in there, because he really looks impressive. He looks impressive physically. I mean, he looks more like a linebacker than Dylan Moses looks like a linebacker already, and he's just a freshman.
Yeah.
And he was very good in high school, which was say that translates over. But I'm really liking Shane Lee a lot.
Shane Lee's definitely the most jacked linebacker we have. And we have some jacked linebackers. But Shane Lee is an animal. He has, his arms look like Zion Williamson's arms, maybe 1.5.
I think I might have this a little wrong. I just caught a glimpse of it, but I know somebody asked Saban about Josh McMillan today in his presser, and he talked about how it's important to have those guys who are, committed and, you can rely on. I don't know. It just kind of gave off that vibe that he wasn't really going to be the guy. He was just kind of a backup. But
yeah.
I wouldn't. Josh McMillan will probably be by Dylan Moses on A-Day, would be my guess. But
yeah,
I don't know if, and he may be there game 1 against Duke. But I would be shocked if McMillan is there by the middle of the season.
I mean, with linebacker, that's one of the toughest positions to understand, the playbook and the game plan and all that. For either whether you're Dylan Moses or playing alongside him, so even it might take half a season for to get a freshman those reps that he needs to, and just the time that he needs to understand the playbook and earn that trust that you need to handle Alabama linebacker.
Yeah, we've had one linebacker come in, inside linebacker, and start day 1, and that's Rolando McClain, and he was a top 15 or 20 pick. I don't know if we've had a linebacker picked higher than that.
Probably not.
I mean, Mosley might have been close, but
I think Mosley was in the 20s.
But yeah, so it's hard to do, especially at that inside linebacker position.
Yeah. Something I'm looking forward to is just making sure that we are pretty certain with how the O-line's going to shape up. Obviously, it's going to switch a little bit because Wills is out, our right tackle, but moving Leatherwood from right guard to left tackle, where he's going to play his more natural position, who fills in for that right guard, and then also he played right guard or left guard?
Who's that?
Leatherwood.
He played
Leatherwood
right guard.
played right guard.
All right, good. And then who's going to fill in for Ross Pierce-Baker at center, and just making sure, most people have a good idea based off what, has come out of spring practice already, but just make sure it gels well and make sure, it's what we're expecting to see.
Saturday, I wouldn't, I'm just going to guess again. I honestly don't know. I think you'll see Leatherwood. I would say Leatherwood and Neal at the tackles, Womack and Deontay Brown at the guards, and Owens at the center position. But I think once Wills gets healthy, I think you'll see Neal slide over to left guard, and Wills will be at right tackle. And I think Brown will slide over to right guard.
Yeah, I mean, Brown's going to miss the first 4 games of the year, right?
From the latest, that's what we heard, yes.
So, obviously, the first few games, it's going to be a little bit different. So, I mean, we'll have to see how those people play. And, last year, Deontay Brown was probably one of our, maybe our second best offensive lineman behind
I would say he's probably our third best.
Third best.
Jedrick Wills had a really good year.
Jedrick Wills
true.
had a really good year.
But either way, just because you were one of the best last year doesn't mean that you're going to, fill up that, especially when you miss the first 4 games of the season for something that, you already hurt your team. So you're already in the doghouse. So it'll take some time to see.
I think Alex Leatherwood's really good. I think he was really good. He's just not a natural guard. I mean, he performed really well in the national championship game when Jonah Williams went out. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Alex Leatherwood go one and done because I mean he was very good in the championship game, and he was a 5-star coming out of high school. And they obviously feel good enough to put him over there at left tackle. So
yeah, he's a little bit undersized for me for left tackle, but I mean, so is Jonah Williams, and obviously if you have the footwork and if you have the pedigree and the coaching, that really doesn't matter as much. It's just like he has I'm not gonna say the class, but he has a class right after me 2 nights a week. And so I see him pretty much at least once a week. Like when I leave class, he goes in the same room. And when I see him, it just doesn't look like a left tackle size. So obviously, he'll be a different size once we get into the season. But I don't know, just something I've noticed. One thing I love about the 8A game compared to other games is you get your first team working together. Like I was watching Clemson's, I don't know what they call their game, but like their spring game, and they draft their teams. So like Trevor Lawrence didn't get to throw with all the first round wide receivers. And I get why they do it. It probably makes it more entertaining, but it's just so annoying to be like, okay, like who's our guys? Who are our starters? And you don't know because half the starters are on each side of the field. But
Yeah.
just something I like. So are there any big storylines going up into 8A that y'all are paying attention to?
I'm just excited to see how, number one, Cameron Latu plays at tight end, especially since we're thin in that area anyway. I think Miller Forrestall will probably get the bulk, but because Latu came in and he played outside linebacker last year, and since we're so thin right now, Saban's like, hey, how did you feel about playing tight end? And so he's tried it out, and I think he's done decent at least. And so I'm excited to see exactly how good he's done. And I'm also excited personally to see Jerome Ford because I've heard he's had a pretty good spring, and I think he may be one of those guys that we don't know right now, but come the mid fall, he may be we already have a good 1-2 punch, but maybe a 1-2-3 punch. I don't know, one of those explosive kind of guys.
I mean, we're also getting Trey Sanders, so it might just be friggin' Doc Ock out there just swinging haymakers with all of its hands.
I'd be okay with that.
Something that's always interesting for the 8A is just who's there, because obviously most of the people who declare early use it as the last time you get to see them before the NFL draft. So I expect Jonah Williams to probably be there. Quinn Williams will definitely be there. Damian Harris, probably Mac Wilson if I had to guess. Irv Smith, just a lot of the players, and of course some of them will be there to have their handprint and cleat print into Denny Chimes as captains, and even if they're not, just as a way to say hey to the team, kind of like going back to your high school, after you graduate, just to say hey to everybody, or at least it'll just be fun. Kind of worried about if we're not going to have Ronnie Harrison there, if we're being perfectly honest. I mean, probably not, but it'll be okay either way.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So what tips y'all have for the 8A? Of course, first off, how many 8As have y'all been to, off the top of your head?
Honestly, I've been to a whole lot. Maybe
this would probably be my 3rd or 4th one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to, I'd say somewhere around the same, maybe 5, but, definitely more than 1 or 2 though.
Yeah.
But yeah. So do y'all have any advice?
I don't have a whole lot of tips, but this is just something. There's some things I enjoy. I really enjoy going to Denny Chimes before the game starts and seeing the last year's captains literally cement their legacies into the University of Alabama with their handprint and cleat print. That's just really cool to see those guys. They led our team last year. Really, really great team. Made the national championship, and it's just really cool seeing those guys again. Things I like to do during the game. It's really hard to assess a lot of things just because your team's playing against your team, so you don't know if you're doing bad. Say somebody throws an interception, your defense got the interception, but the quarterback threw it. So is your defense good or is your offense bad, or a mixture of both? It's hard to tell. So I just try to enjoy it, not think too much into it, just enjoy all the players and getting to see all of them. Just a little sneak peek of the fall.
Yeah, I don't really have any tips. I'm just excited to watch them play. I mean, you try not to read too much into stuff. I mean, if you remember last year, everybody was talking about how bad Jalen was and how good Mac Jones was, and obviously that didn't turn out to hold true come fall. So I mean, I'm really excited to see like the freshmen and sophomores who didn't get to play much last year play. That's what I'm really excited to see. The main thing, number one goal is not even performance. It's just hopefully everybody stays healthy, and just excited to see especially the new guys play.
Yeah, the only advice I can come up with is just like if you're going for the whole experience and not just the game, like Google, A-Day schedule, because the university puts on so many events. There's, you can listen to the band. You can probably, I think Eli Gold usually does something. You can find all sorts of autographed places. There's usually some free things you can get. Obviously, just the normal game day atmosphere. And if you don't know what all's happening, you're probably going to miss something. So it's all over the internet. Just, Google, A-Day schedule or things happening A-Day weekend or whatever. And you'll find plenty of stuff, and you just have to figure out what you want to do. And as of right now, it's scheduled to possibly rain and have there be lightning. So probably bring ponchos or umbrellas. And just in case, bring sunscreen, because I'm pretty sure I've gotten burnt every single A-Day I've ever been to. So just general rule of thumb. But I think that wraps it up unless there's anything else y'all want to put in. It was, relatively short episode. Of course, we got interrupted by our roommate, and I'm totally going to leave that in there because he wants to be on the podcast, and he just made it on the podcast. Anyway, so yeah, that wraps up this episode of Dorm Squad Sports. Again, make sure y'all follow us on Twitter, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you want to listen to this. Thank y'all. Have a happy week. And finally, thank God we get to say it again. Have a happy game day. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.